Tonight, a state of emergency as Calgary contends with a catastrophic water main break. The declaration underscoring the seriousness of the situation.
We are working around the clock, but it will take time.
Inspections reveal more damage, and the planning required for repairs is complex.
A state of local emergency lets us manage unknown scenarios.
An epic face-off in Edmonton.
In deep, in front, scores!
In the quest for the coveted cup. Trudeau touches down at Ukraine's peace summit.
Canada will keep supporting Ukraine until victory.
World leaders look for a clear path forward for Russia and Ukraine.
Today is the day when the world begins to bring a just peace closer.
Plus, big business for a bucket list item.
Seeing a whale in its element, something I've always really hoped for.
Whale watching tops the charts within the billion-dollar tourism industry.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. A major statement by the Edmonton Oilers tonight in their quest to bring the Stanley Cup back to Canada. An offensive outburst against the Florida Panthers to keep the series and championship hopes alive. The excitement unfolding in front of their die-hard fans.
In deep, in front, scores!
The Oilers got off to a roaring start, grabbing the early lead and didn't look back, crushing the Panthers 8-1. CTV's Matt Woodman is in Edmonton's Ice District. Matt, what a night for fans.
Absolutely, Heather. It is crazy out right here in the Moss Pit. It's a party in the Moss Pit, it's a party in Ice District, and it's a party in the city of Edmonton tonight, at least for one more night, one more playoff party. The Stanley Cup is in Rogers Place. It will not be on the ice, though. The Edmonton Oilers defeating the Florida Panthers 8-1 in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final, forcing a Game 5 in Florida on Tuesday. The fans here have been riled up all day. It has been wild. Take a look at the Moss Pit here right now, just moments after that huge Game 4 win for the Oilers. These fans have been partying all day long. It started with Shania in the fan park. The Canadian music icon got the fans pumped up, and they've been going hard and having a blast and having fun ever since. Thousands of people in the fan park in the Moss Pit. A sea of orange and blue out here this evening, as you can see. And the fans, there's a new hope, new optimism in this lot. They know the odds are still stacked against them. The odds of reaching the Cup Finals from odds makers and winning are only 6.6%, and no team has come back from a 3-0 series deficit to win the Stanley Cup since the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1942, so it's been 82 years. Can the Oilers accomplish it? We'll have to wait and find out. It all starts with Game 5 in Florida, but more optimism for the Oilers and their fans here at Edmonton tonight.
CTV's Matt Woodman in Edmonton. Thank you. About 3 hours south in Calgary, the city has declared a local state of emergency after more damage was discovered in a critical water main that ruptured more than a week ago. The problem is putting the spotlight on Canadian infrastructure and the costs cities face to keep things flowing. CTV's Christina Tenalia has more.
10 days in, and the city of Calgary is in crisis.
I signed the paperwork to declare a local state of emergency.
The new status allows the city to move faster to get materials and coordinate action for the quickest repair.
This work is our top priority as a city.
The upgrade comes after yesterday's announcement that several more locations inside the feeder main pipe need to be fixed, meaning anywhere from 3 to 5 more weeks of water restrictions.
I hate to do this to you, Calgary, but I'm going to have to do it again. We are going to need to reduce our water use.
The mayor says the city has managed to stabilize usage, but today, officials pushed businesses to use less water.
And they actually make up about 35% of the city's water consumption.
This local restaurant manager is doing his part.
Our suppliers will wash our vegetables and do that kind of stuff for us to limit our water usage. The city of Calgary is a resilient bunch, and we'll pull together and we'll figure it out.
And now is the time for other Canadian cities to figure it out, says this emergency management expert.
It's an early warning sign. for the rest of the country.
Calgary's troubled pipe was installed in 1975. It's at the halfway point of its 100-year lifespan.
It can happen anytime, anywhere, in any city and in Canada. Infrastructure spending has been cut since the 1960s. These are underground pipelines. So you have no idea when and what will occur.
Statistics Canada notes government-owned infrastructure spending surged in the 60s and 70s, then was cut. Spending didn't increase again until the 2000s. But the growth wasn't enough to prevent wear and tear on critical infrastructure.
Good afternoon.
At an update late today, officials say they are still looking at ways to try to speed up work.
But not at the risk of public health or work quality.
And the timing of the citywide emergency has raised questions about the Calgary Stampede. The 10-day event attracts more than 1 million people, including tourists, and it's 3 weeks away. A spokesperson for the Stampede says organizers will continue to work with the city and emergency management officials as the situation evolves. Heather.
Christina, thank you. The Princess of Wales made her first public appearance this year as she undergoes treatment for cancer. Kate smiled broadly from the balcony of Buckingham Palace after watching a military parade to mark the official birthday of King Charles, an encouraging sign for royal watchers following much speculation and secrecy about her health. CTV's Rahim Ladani has more.
A display of birthday pageantry as King Charles III and Queen Camilla were paraded in front of a large crowd in celebration of the Trooping the Colour. The symbolic spectacle has taken place since 1805, now involving 1,400 soldiers, 250 military musicians, and more than 200 horses. While the sovereign's actual birthday is in November, the parade is traditionally held in June, an opportunity to demonstrate professional excellence and loyalty to the crown. For royal watchers, Saturday's Trooping the Colour is also the first time they were able to catch a glimpse of Princess Catherine in public. Arriving in carriage with her children, this is Kate's first public appearance since disclosing in March that she had been diagnosed with cancer. The Princess of Wales could later be seen watching the parade from a balcony with her kids.
I think this is probably for her the end of the beginning of the treatment. And so she's able to come out today. She's obviously looking fine, looking in good form.
A day earlier, Kate penned a public letter saying she is undergoing chemotherapy and that her treatment will continue for a few months. Also sharing that there are good days and bad days and that she's starting to do little work from home.
It was a plea for that because there'd been so much speculation we hadn't been kept informed and there was a decided problem. But equally, there's no doubt also that this does show a very, very encouraging sign.
A flypast by the Royal Air Force capped an end to the King's birthday parade as the family waved to the crowd in a symbolic show of unity. Rahim Ladani, CTV News, Toronto.
Britain's Prime Minister is now in Switzerland with 100 world leaders for a conference dedicated to setting out a path toward peace between Ukraine and Russia. Before arriving at the summit, Canada's Prime Minister faced some tough questions on allegations of foreign interference here at home. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver reports.
For 2 weeks, allegations members of Parliament were wittingly or semi-wittingly helping foreign state actors have dominated the agenda in Ottawa. And today, thousands of miles away in Italy, the Prime Minister called into question the Parliamentary Committee's findings and refused to say whether any of his Liberal MPs were named.
We made clear some of the concerns we have with the way the NSICOP drew its conclusions.
That confidential report names a small number of parliamentarians who colluded with foreign governments. It also names China and India as foreign interference threats. On Friday, Trudeau briefly interacted with the Indian Prime Minister at the G7. The two talked about bilateral relations, but Trudeau won't say whether foreign interference came up.
I highlighted that there are important issues that we need to work together on, and we will do that.
As soon as the G7 wrapped, the first Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland started, bringing together nearly 100 world leaders and organizations to work on a possible roadmap for peace in Ukraine.
Today is the day when the world begins to bring a just, peace closer.
Food and nuclear safety and the exchange of prisoners of war are priorities at the summit that also aims to reaffirm long-term support for Ukraine. But some countries say Russia's absence diminishes any hope the summit will yield results. And experts say that could give Putin a boost.
Any sign of weakness or lack of resolve emanating from the summit will, I think, further encourage him.
Putin has said he will implement a ceasefire and begin peace talks if Ukraine withdraws all of its troops from areas Russia claims to have annexed. Zelensky has rejected that offer and will push for more international support, Heather, at the summit.
Annie, thank you. Canada has committed $4 billion in military assistance to Ukraine, but the country's top soldier says Ottawa needs to pull its weight when it comes to NATO spending. Here's CTV's Jeremy Sharon on the candid criticism.
On the heels of a meeting between NATO defense ministers in Brussels this week, a blunt assessment of Canada's contributions from the country's top soldier.
We need to pull our weight.
In an interview with CTV's Question Period with Vashi Kapelos, set to air Sunday, outgoing Chief of the Defense Staff General Wayne Eyre was asked if Canada's lack of a plan to meet NATO's defense spending target was justifiable.
From my perspective, I do not defend that, and nobody in uniform defends that. That is very much a political decision.
Eyre says his larger concern is readiness.
Are we ready to counter those threats?
At this point, no. The military that we have right now is not ready to counter the threats that we see coming.
Canada has faced increased public pressure from allies to outline a plan to get to NATO's defense spending target of 2% of GDP. Canada is the only NATO country that hasn't clearly carved out a path to reach the goal, which allies agreed last summer would become a floor, not a ceiling.
NATO is an organization built on unity. Peace through strength is what it's all about. These are the main things we learned from the death and destruction of the Second World War. So the key there is that Canada just has to get up to that 2%.
The federal government updated its defense policy in April with a plan to get to 1.76% of GDP on defense by 2030, but set no target for 2%. Friday, the Minister of Defense said new investments in the Arctic will put Canada on track to meet the target soon, but didn't lay out a timeline.
I believe it brings us inevitably to over 2% of defense spending, but I've got some work to do in order to be able to articulate that both to my own country and to our allies.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is likely to face more tough questions about Canada's defense spending when he meets with other heads of state at NATO's 75th anniversary summit in Washington next month. Heather?
All right, Jeremy, thank you. 8 Israeli soldiers were killed when their armored vehicle was targeted in an explosion in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The Israeli Defense Force today releasing this footage from its ongoing offensive in the area. It comes as thousands of protesters tonight gathered in Tel Aviv, rallying against the government's handling of the conflict. Protests across France today, too, where hundreds of thousands took to the streets denouncing the rise of the country's far-right political party ahead of looming snap elections. In Paris, demonstrators carrying anti-racism flags clashed with police. Authorities say around 21,000 officers were deployed across the country, with up to 500,000 protesters expected nationwide. A growing trend among Canadian children, severe food allergies. Doctors say it's a result of the perfect storm, linking genetics to environmental factors. But there are new treatments and prevention strategies taking off. CTV's Allison Bamford has more.
Each day at school, I always carry an EpiPen.
Brandon Penaligan's protection against one of the most common food allergies in kids, peanuts. But the 13-year-old is trying to reverse his allergy with an oral immunotherapy trial that reintroduces peanuts into his system in small doses.
My throat starts to close up a little bit. My tongue is itchy.
Symptoms that disappear shortly after, with the goal of one day allowing Brandon to eat whatever he wants. It's an issue 6 to 7% of all Canadian children face. Food allergies growing in prevalence over the last 2 decades.
The demand for allergy assessment is increasing significantly.
And the million-dollar question for allergists is why.
It's not one specific factor, it's more than one in the right person that's predisposed to it. And unfortunately, we don't have a good grasp on exactly who that one person is.
There are a number of theories linking it to a lack of vitamin D exposure, genetics, changes to our gut bacteria, and delayed introduction to allergens.
When the body sees the food through the gut, it does create a tolerant response to that food. Whereas when it sees the food through broken down skin, it creates an immune response. So that's why we have this mantra in allergy of eat early, eat often.
A shift from recommendations a decade ago, but as prevention and treatment evolve, doctors are optimistic.
With many things in medicine, really acting early, both for primary prevention and treating early in infancy, really needs to be the way to go in the future.
Anxiety among the general population can complicate things, with worried parents choosing to hold off on early introduction to certain foods. But experts say when done safely, the rewards greatly outweigh the risks. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Coming up, impossibly unaffordable.
I feel like it's almost out of the question for me and my partner.
The Canadian cities where buying a home is out of reach for many. Plus, the industry luring visitors to Newfoundland. The persistent struggle for affordable housing worldwide is being showcased in a new report. Two major Canadian cities fall under the category of impossibly unaffordable. CTV's Kathy Lee crunches the numbers on the dubious distinction.
Two Canadian cities rank high on a list for most unaffordable markets in the world to buy a home. Vancouver is third, Toronto 11th.
This is a long time coming. We haven't been building enough housing. We certainly haven't had enough government investment in affordable housing for decades, and the chickens are coming home to roost.
The Demographia report analyzes housing affordability in 94 cities in 8 countries and ranks them using a median price to income ratio. A rating under 3 means affordable, over 9 is impossibly unaffordable. Toronto and Vancouver scored over 9.
Buying a property right now, I feel like is almost out of the question for me and my partner. We just can't afford to do it.
A housing shortage is driving up the cost. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says an extra 3.5 million homes need to be built to restore affordability by 2030. In April, the federal government announced billions in spending commitments to address the problem, but it might be too late for some.
We have considered potentially looking at opportunities in the United States.
The report highlights housing costs outpacing income growth as the main cause of the crisis in the countries studied. In Canada, Edmonton is the cheapest market to buy a home, labeled as moderately unaffordable. Calgary is listed as seriously unaffordable. Ottawa and Montreal are severely unaffordable.
I don't think the next 10 years of price growth is going to be like the last 10 years. But people have to be a bit more creative to get into the market. Some people that are under rent control in really good living conditions, what they're doing is actually buying an investment property as their first property so that they can get into the market. They're teaming up with their friends and families to co-buy properties and actually get in.
Nearly 90% of the cities in the study did not fall into the highest rank of impossibly unaffordable. However, none of them scored 3 or lower, which is a cutoff to be deemed affordable. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Still ahead, trapped and terrified. The traumatic moments for riders at an amusement park south of the border. Hundreds of mourners filled a park in western Manitoba today to honor the 17 seniors killed in a fiery crash 1 year ago. The collision between a transport truck and bus happened near Carberry, more than 150 kilometers from Winnipeg. The seats filled with seniors heading to the Sandhills Casino. A monument unveiled in the city of Dauphin today recognizes the long road to recovery for so many. The names of the seniors who died were read out, and a moment of silence was held to remember the victims. HMCS Charlottetown set sail from Halifax to take up a flagship role supporting NATO operations in the Mediterranean.
They will be tasked, just as any other ships in the group, with specific warfare duties or diplomatic duties, but they're the floating headquarters.
Family braved the rain as the crew departed on the 6-month mission. The Charlottetown's first stop will be in Toulon in France in about a week and a half. Some tense moments at an amusement park in Portland, Oregon, after one of the rides malfunctioned and got stuck.
They've just been hanging up there this whole time.
Dramatic video revealed the race to rescue nearly 30 panicked riders left hanging upside down 30 meters in the air for nearly half an hour.
I was terrified. I didn't think I was going to live to see right now.
Firefighters and park staff were eventually able to manually override the system, safely returning the riders to the ground. The ride has been shut down until further notice. After the break, cruising into big business off the coast of Newfoundland. If a close encounter with one of the ocean's most majestic creatures is on your bucket list, then you may want to pay attention. Spotting a whale is not guaranteed, but that's not deterring tourists who are flocking to Newfoundland. CTV's Garrett Berry takes us behind the scenes now of a growing backbone in the province's tourism industry.
Another full boatload setting out for the chase. The prize, a close encounter like this with a whale or a dolphin, maybe a once-in-a-lifetime shot. They come from far and wide, drawn for a chance to see great beauty.
Being able to participate in something as just organic and natural and beautiful as seeing a whale in its element, something I've always really hoped for. I've never seen it before. Kind of like a bucket list item.
There's never a guarantee that you'll get what you came for. It makes it always a little exciting.
I was hoping it would be right next to the boat. We booked this trip before we left Norway.
Well, this is our first time on the East Coast, and we really wanted to take the whale watching for sure.
Survey says visitors can't get enough. Almost 500,000 people visited this province in 2023, and various surveys suggest between 30 to 40% of summer visitors made one of these whale watching trips, making this big business.
I like to say that most of our mainlanders have never seen the ocean, let alone been on it. So I like to say they come to Newfoundland to get the smell of office off of them.
The provincial government says tourism is a billion-dollar industry in Newfoundland and Labrador, one that's still recovering from COVID-19 hits. Industry players here have bet big on marketing this place, and there's early indication those bets are paying off, with visitor numbers almost back to pre-pandemic levels.
I've seen puffins here, seen a couple of other things, and I've been to Cape Sphere, lots of other fun places.
Today, no spectacular whale sightings or splashes, but not much disappointment either. Some visitors figuring they'll just have to give it another go. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
It is a spectacular sight. That is our newscast for this Saturday night. I'm Heather Butts for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.